I'm Mario Martinez Jr., CEO and founder of Ingresso, and we are the creators of flymessage.io, the free personal writing assistant and text expander application. On each episode of this podcast, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you grow your sales numbers at scale. So, get your pen and paper or iPad and keyboard and start taking notes as you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And with me today, I've got my friend who is a brand new book author. And I'm so impressed because, as all of you know, 7 years I've been saying I should write the book. I should write the book. I even have the name picked out, but I refuse to put pen to paper because I just haven't mustered up enough courage, time, whatever, fill in the blank. But somebody has done this in my circle, and I'm honored to have Mr. Jason Hartz. He is a brand new book author of the Hartz Method, a Sales Performance Playbook. He also happens to be the director of Demand Services Development Programs at Oracle. Jason, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks again. Thank you, Mario. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Excited to have you here with us. Now, do me a favor. Tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into a very special question that I've got about you.
Sure thing. Well, again, we could go back as far as the womb, but I think I'd put everybody to sleep. So I'll start with pretty much my professional career after leaving stand-up comedy for 10 years in Los Angeles and walking the gym floor and getting into fitness franchising, and from there getting into sales training, which led me to Oracle, which led me to a fintech as director of sales, back to Oracle as director of demand generation programs.
Fantastic. And tell me a little bit more about this comedy experience. You said 10 years?
10 years, West Hollywood, working for Pauly Shore, Pauly Shore's mom up at the Comedy Store. I worked everything from the ticket booth to the bartender to driving Mitzi. And again, a lot of folks might not know who Mitzi is. She's the queen of comedy who gave David Letterman and Roseanne Barr and Dice Clay and you name it, they started there. So I worked for those folks for 10 years. And also when I could, I got up and got some stage time too, and toured the country.
Very cool. So wait a minute. So you went from stand-up comedy to sales enablement? Like that's a big transition there.
Yeah, we're talking about 30 years condensed into a 3-minute pitch here. So there's been a lot of steps to get to sales enablement. But basically, I went from stand-up to learning about business and sales and being comfortable in standing up in front of large groups of people and then actually having an act that worked and having a sales methodology behind me that boosted my confidence to be able to talk to large amounts of people in sales and lead them and coach them to be successful.
Fantastic. That's an awesome background. And of course, now you've just released the book, The Hartz Method. So congratulations on that. That's a big accomplishment. How long was the process to write the book and then get it published?
Yeah, so I'd say that it took about 5 years to try to organize my thoughts. Things really came together over the pandemic with the large amounts of time that we all had at home. And then it really came on strong in the last year. And so for those that are writing a book or struggling, stick with it. It does take some extra time.
And I imagine you probably missed a lot of evening time, beautiful sun, something like that to get this done. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in New England, when you get about 3 good nights without rain in the summer, without getting mosquito bites on your porch. Yeah, that's about right. So it does take, it hurts a little bit, but the payoff is tremendous. I recommend you do it.
Well, I'm excited to talk about that. And so I do have a very special question that I ask all my guests who are on the show, and that is tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles. And I'm looking for something juicy, Jason.
You got one. Well, I worked on a movie called The League of Their Own with Tom Hanks and Madonna and Rosie O'Donnell, and directed by Penny Marshall. I worked on a lot of movies out in L.A. while I was doing stand-up. That's one of my favorite experiences in Chicago. It was the summer of 91? So I'm giving you my age in a little bit there.
Wait, wasn't that with Gina Davis as well? Wasn't she in that?
That was with Gina Davis as well, absolutely.
And that was the famous line where Tom Hanks says, "There's no crying in baseball." Is that the one?
100%. Yeah.
I loved that movie. What a great movie. That was good. So when you say you worked on it, what exactly did you do?
So basically, I got coffee for everybody. I was the gopher. I was go for this, go for that, get me this. Go into my trailer and get this script. I was running all over Wrigley Field. Again, it was the best summer of my life. That was actually the same summer that they shot The Babe with John Goodman. So that's another movie I worked on that folks wouldn't know. But I was a production assistant on that too.
All right. So the real question is do you got Tom Hanks's bat phone and Gina Davis's bat phone? Can you reach out to them and say, "Hey, I've written a book now. I was your coffee guy. Can you help a brother out?"
Yeah, I mean, we're talking now a long time ago. So no, they wouldn't. They couldn't pick me up out of a lineup.
Oh man. All right. Well, no problem. That is a cool fun fact that nobody knows. And I did like that movie, A League of Their Own. In fact, I was just talking about it with somebody else last week, where we actually been playing a bunch of flag football. My sons, I have two boys, 13 and 9, and all of their friends every Saturday for the last 4 weeks have been playing flag football. And last Saturday it was raining pretty hard, and we played. It was a great time. And then somebody got hurt, and they of course started tearing up. And then someone says, "There's no crying in flag football."
Especially flag football.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I know where that's from, A League of Their Own.
Yeah, it was a great time. Good time.
Great. Well, let's get into, first off, tell me about the inspiration of the Hartz Method, a sales performance playbook. What was the inspiration behind that? And then I want to get into talking about some performance-based selling discussions.
Sure. Well, again, as I've reached middle age, you start to take a look back over your shoulder at the things you've accomplished in this life and what you might have to offer for others coming up. And I you don't think about it at the time, but here I was earning $50 a day at the Comedy Store for all those years, and slugging it out and working the back door and watching the greatest performances in the world when it comes to stand-up. Chris Rock and all my heroes would show up. Richard Pryor before he passed as well. And along with all of my experience doing stand-up comedy, I had all of that experience. And I didn't really know if or how it would ever pay off. And so, all of these experiences you have in life, they add on. You just don't know. When one door closes and another opens, you just don't know where life will take you. And so when I was starting to think back as to, with my experience with sales and the methodology that I started to create, I wanted to encompass that portion of my life, because I wouldn't be standing here speaking with you, Mario, without those 10 years at the Comedy Store. And that's how it all came to be, because again, it is sales and stand-up and stage performance. You are selling, you're spitting and going the whole time. And the same thing goes for when you're with a customer. And so I married those two things together.
I appreciate the inspiration. Let's get into this concept of performance-based selling. Obviously, we have sales leaders, sales enablement leaders, we have sales reps listening in, but let's define, what is performance-based selling?
Sure thing. Again, there could be a lot of definitions out there. My definition of performance-based selling is literally turning any customer-facing conversation into treating it as if you're on stage and it's a stage performance. So rehearsing, practicing your lines, repetition, dressing the part, syncing with team members or cast members prior to any customer-facing calls, being prepared for unruly audiences, aka hecklers, or being prepared for those objections, And so, once you are customer facing, either over Zoom or now getting back to in person, it's go time. And anytime, again, we're not looking to give any of our prospects an excuse not to do business with us. And if you start to treat your each and every interaction with a customer as if you're standing on stage and performing, your ratio to hits to wins is going to increase.
Okay. So most people would just say, hey, it's selling. The selling is selling, right? Like you've got to perform every single time you get in front of a customer. Why the extra nomenclature, performance-based?
Well, everybody, all different types of sales, they're all very different. And there are some that take that approach and have been highly successful, put their kids through college and have retired with that mindset. There are other sellers out there that struggle, that love the business, that love what they do, but yet can't make the connection lots of times. And so really performance-based selling is also creating home court advantage for yourself. In setting up, again, you might have a virtual office these days, but I'm thinking back to when I actually owned my businesses and my franchises, when I owned my fitness franchises, and just setting up that home court advantage and being very comfortable as a seller because I've created this atmosphere. And the same thing goes for the actors and those that are on stage. They create the atmosphere, and it's almost as if the prospects have nothing else to do but follow your lead.
I love what you're talking about. For those of you that are listening in, you won't see what I'm about to do on Zoom. But for those of you that are watching the video, or if you're listening, go watch the video off of Vingresso.com and find the blog, the podcast with Jason Hartz, Hartz. But Jason, I think of it this way, and this is a very simplistic, single-minded, threaded tract on performance-based selling, where you're showing up to the stage every single day. Now, you're seeing right now my background, which is a Zoom background, and that's where I want to be at. That is one day when we make it big with Vingresso and our Fly Message SaaS solution and our training products, we will sell this bad boy, and I'll be sitting in my new office, which will be out on the water. But I also have alternative backgrounds, and I just changed it. Perhaps I'm now in the city of San Francisco, overlooking the skyline, and that's what I just changed it to. Or maybe I'm meeting with a prospect that's out in the desert mountain. And so I just swapped it right now. For those who are listening, I just swapped it to a desert mountain background. Or perhaps I'm meeting someone in the Colorado Rockies, or in Park City, Utah, in the middle of winter. Well, guess what I just put up on the board? This is an office that shows the slopes and the snow. Or perhaps it's just an ugly, rainy day, and we're doing an evening meeting with Asia Pacific. And that having been said, I just threw up a background that has rain on the windows that is still branded for, in this case, Vingresso, still branded, but in this case, it's a rainy day. So this is, the way I think of it in my very simplistic mind, is just one step of performance-based selling, meaning I'm going to show up to this stage with something that attracts the target audience, that allows me to, what's the word I'm looking for? To have a conversation starter. Yeah. And that draws in my buyer. Is this a one aspect of what you talk about in terms of, hey, when you show up to a meeting, you got to put on a performance, and that performance is to draw that audience in to be able to want more information. Is that the type of thing we're talking about?
Mario, that's perfect. And the other thing is it doesn't take, some of the things in the book, or as you know, require a comfort zone stretch. This requires zero comfort zone stretch to do just simple things to create home court advantage. The other thing I like in the direction you're going, which also I like to propose to the sellers at Oracle, is you could have 1 to 6 or 7 people from your company on a call. My recommendation would be all of you have the same background. It does a lot of things. It lets your prospects know that you're rowing in the same direction, that there's unity, and that you've got your stuff together. There's not 8 different backgrounds where you can't even pick out who's who on a sales call these days on Zoom. So 100%. And it's a very easy lift, an easy thing to do.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this concept of performance-based selling and how it can boost maybe self-confidence or sales acumen. Talk a little bit about that, or maybe it doesn't. Perhaps it doesn't do that. Give a little background about that.
I recently gave a talk on which comes first, confidence or experience. And Mario, we could have a long debate as to which one comes first and contributes to your ultimate success. If you think of any life-changing commission you've ever landed, it obviously it comes down to both. In my humble opinion, some are born with confidence and some manufacture confidence at the right time for long enough to gain your prospects' trust that you've been here before and that you can be a good Sherpa and a guide and lead them through this process. So every cold call, every discovery call that boosts that confidence and emboldens sellers to be more assertive, not aggressive. We could have that discussion for 3 hours, the difference between being assertive and not aggressive. There's that fine line. But I have yet to meet a successful seller that doesn't have both confidence and experience. And sometimes, we could have a nice 3-hour argument as to which needs to come first or which is required first in order to get people up and running.
Showing up is not just enough to help build individual confidence and or sales acumen, which is the experience part that you're referring to, yeah?
Yeah, because you get people, again, I work with so many folks that just replicate the same behaviors when it comes to selling over and over again, and they always complain or they'll whisper, they'll talk out of the side of their mouth as to why that seller, why are they having the success and not I? And really what they're doing is they're just replicating what they're doing. They might have seen some success with that years ago, and they just keep replicating that over and over again, as opposed to, again, doing what's difficult and what's hard and stretching out of your comfort zone. And again, that's based in performance and walking the walk. And so again, for those that are struggling or that are continuously earning the same or less over the same amount of time, it's time to start to change what you're doing to make you, to get you to that next level and make you successful once again.
So give us some advice. What do you think are 3 major performance-based steps that a seller can do to prepare for a customer-facing or virtual sales call? Or perhaps it's what a manager can help their sellers do. 3 major performance-based steps. What can either I do or what can a manager do, or both?
Well, I think I'm going to make it very, very easy. I think just changing the way you dress would start to change the way you act and the way you feel. And so I'm a big fan of dressing and outdressing the room. Outdress your prospects. That might be a good start to changing into becoming a performer. The other is to go back to being scripted. Again, you can only sound rehearsed if you go back to those scripts. And we could talk a million places as to where, you might use a script. Whenever I'm standing in front of a room of sellers and I mention the word script, people get very nervous. Do you know why, Mario? Well, why do you think? If I were to say, all right, Mario, we're going to go back on book today, why would you as a seller go,
one, because I got to learn a script. 2, I might think I sound robotic. 3, I'm kind of winging it and I'd prefer to be natural and let conversation flow. That's what I could think of.
Okay. I'm right with you for a couple of those. I would nod and say absolutely right. Again, wanting things to grow. But where I'm talking about being scripted and being a performer is that it's up to us to set the table. We want home court advantage. And the way you get home court advantage is by asking good questions and going to market with a set of questions that are going to open the can of worms and get your prospect talking. So when I talk about being scripted, I'm not talking about perhaps your answers being scripted, but your questioning strategy scripted to a T that's going to get them. And if you're thinking about your prospects as witnesses on the stand, or you're speaking to your prospect as if they're a judge and jury, you need to ask them questions that the last three competitors of yours didn't have the guts to ask, or didn't ask, or didn't think to ask. I mean, scripting and having some notes at your elbow can help be a great guide. So that's two. And the third thing I would say would be basically, if I'm thinking about the book, Chapter 10 discusses and talks about the pre-call, the pre-work, and getting ready for those big discovery calls. The discovery call you might hold by yourself, or there might be a solution engineer or your manager or your manager's manager on this important call. You're going to want to set the table. And if you make that pre-call and, again, ask those questions that are going to guarantee a successful discovery call 2 or 3 days from the time that you're actually speaking to that prospect, I think your life is going to be and go a lot easier, and it might actually shorten your sales cycle as well, so you don't burn all that valuable time at the top of that initial important call. So again, it's the pre-call prior that sets the table nice, creates that home court advantage, so you already know what the performance is. You don't have to guess as to what's going to happen on that day. You basically have already set the agenda and the expectations for what's going to happen, not only on that call, but next steps after that call, if there's a determination that both parties should speak.
So what I think I heard you say are 3 things to prepare. We want to think about outdressing the room. Here I am in my my little hoodie right now out here on the podcast, right? But I was cold, by the way. I do have a nice little black shirt on. And think about our script. And I think this one, to me, resonates the absolute best from my perspective, which is your script. And you touched on this, and I immediately went into, I'm scripting out the whole call. But you actually took it a bit more granular level, which is, look, set the table. How do you set the table? What questions are you going to ask? And make sure you get those questions. And it actually reminds me of, as you know, we are doing a venture capital fundraise. And anytime I get a VC on the phone, I've got 6 questions that I want to ask them. One of them, as an example, is how large is your fund? What percentage of that fund is already currently invested? How much do you save of that fund to reinvest back into companies that you see that you would want to reinvest in? And then there's a series of other questions. And that helps me understand, like, am I wasting my time talking to somebody who doesn't have a fund that they can actually fund? And I've literally been on the call saying, oh, your fund is tapped out and you're fundraising. When are you going to finish fundraising? Oh, not for 6 months? Hey, it's not worth our conversation until you're done with your fundraising, right? So because I don't want to waste my time and their time in that regard. But that's as an example on venture capital fundraising. But if I was on the sales side, we actually created playbooks for our sales plays, and in those playbooks is the call script. And that call script is essentially ask a question. If it's yes or no, yes, ask this question. No, ask this question. Then here's another question. If this is the answer, go here. If this is the answer, go there. And I think what you're saying is in order for you to set this table as a seller, you've got to know exactly what you're going in and looking for to be able to diagnose if there's a problem that you can solve, is really the idea. Did I get all that right so far with the first 2?
Yeah, and if you're asking great questions prior to even the main call, you're already telling your prospect, I've been here before, I know what I'm doing. It's almost like you're sitting in a doctor's office and the person or not the nurse, but what the nurse practitioner might come in and ask you some questions. And so when that clipboard gets yanked out of the door and the doctor comes in, they already have a good place to drop the needle on the record and to start asking questions.
Got it. Okay. Then the third thing you mentioned is the pre-work or pre-call. And this was setting up a pre-call in preparation for the discovery.
Yeah.
And let's deep dive on that for a moment here, because I think this is an area that most sellers don't do. Example, somebody was prospecting to us. It was, you got Microsoft Azure, that is the big cloud infrastructure. You've got Oracle, that's a big cloud infrastructure. You've got Amazon. You've got Google Cloud. You've got a couple of big players out there, yeah? And a seller from one of those companies booked a call with me. And I reached out. I liked the message, and I said, sure, I'll take the call. So he shows up to the call and says, so tell me a little bit about the company and about some of your needs. And I say, can you give me some direction? I'm the CEO of the company. Well, what exactly are you asking me? He was like, well, tell me a little bit about the product. What does it do? Did you do any research? Yeah, I actually went on the website. What did you understand we did? Well, I'm actually not really sure. Did you set up a free account? No, I didn't do that. Well, if you understand that we do AI, which is what you're really proposing here, some AI solutions, why didn't you set up the application for free and utilize the AI for free? Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't have done that. Oh, well, I'm sorry, I was just coming from call to call. Boom. As soon as he said that, what is said to me as a buyer is, bro, you booked the call with me. I didn't reach out to you. You reached out to me. And what it showed me is you didn't have enough time to show me that you knew me. You didn't care. And so his excuse well, as you know, the BDR was actually on the call as well. The BDR had booked the call. As you know, John Smith, scheduled this call. And, my job is here to try to understand, some of your business needs. And I said, yes, but the problem is that you showed up to this call with a sales influencer and CEO of my own company. If you had taken any time to get to know me, you would have known that you would have not shown up on this call without dotting every I and crossing every T, because shame on you for joining on this and having no idea what we do and what our AI does, and you're selling AI.
Mario, no salesperson knows what's on the other end of a phone or an other end of a Zoom. It could be a $10,000 deal. It could be a $1 million deal, but you got to treat them all the same. All the great performers that I have ever seen at the Comedy Store at 2 o'clock in the morning, when the doors are locked and they're performing for stand-ups and maybe three, I'll say, unsober people that are left in the audience, they give it their all. There's a reason they've got 6 Netflix specials. It's because they've done the lifting. They've done the work, because there could have been in that closed 2 o'clock in the morning room, which I've seen, an agent from CAA or a William Morris agent or someone from the Paramount lot. I mean, you're sitting in Hollywood. You don't know who you're sitting next to in the dark. And the same thing goes when you're talking to prospects. You don't know who knows who and what type of influence they really have without doing that little bit of legwork. It really comes down to people they fall into 2 categories. They're either chicken or they're lazy. And there are a lot of lazy sellers. And there's so many different approaches out there. But again, that sales performance, if you're looking at every interaction, at every 5 minutes you get on stage, there could be a CAA agent or a Tonight Show booker or $100,000 at the other end of a Zoom. You got to do the legwork, because you got to also ask yourself, Mario, do I hold a job or do I have a profession? And that's another great topic we could, again, spend lots of time on, where sellers, again, they just continue to do that behavior over and over again because it's a job. A profession is, there's craft to that profession, and there is work that you put in.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because let me tell you my story that happened afterwards, and love for you to analyze this. So after that, of course, I wasn't a total jerk or a butthead to the individual, because I'm also trained salespeople for a living, yeah? And so the right thing to do is try to coach and enable. So throughout the conversation, he finally asked me a question. Why did you take this call? Like, what were you hoping to get out of it? And I said, I wasn't. You booked a meeting. It was a good email. You piqued my curiosity because we are using AI from one of the major providers and is embedded into our platform. And perhaps there was an opportunity to be able to work with you guys and spread the love of leveraging different AI platforms. And he said, well, what would make you change? And I said, well, with the current provider that we've got, I've got $100,000 worth of free money. And he's like, okay, well, what would make you change? I said, I wouldn't, unless you give me money. All right. And so he said, okay. So subsequently he said, well, I'm going to do some research. I'm going to help you understand the difference between that AI and our AI. And he did. About 3 days later, came back with a very detailed, comprehensive analysis of their AI versus our AI. But it didn't matter to me, Jason. I read it and I said, my boy missed the cue. The cue was, which is what he said he would follow up with. When he heard me say, I wouldn't unless you're offering more credits as a startup company. And he said, that's a great point. We do have that, and I can get you access. Let me look into those funds. But then his follow-up was all centered around why our AI is better than their AI and it's more secure. Would you be interested in having an additional discussion around it being more secure? And it's like, bro, are you kidding me? You guys are all Fortune 100s. Nobody's AI is more secure than the other AI. It's enterprise-grade AI. Like, I told you I wouldn't be interested unless we're talking about credits. And here's the part about that. The company that gives the startup company all the credits and dollars to be able to use their platform, I'm going to be pretty much in bed with them for quite a long time because I don't want to have the time to sit there and rip it all out once the credits are over and done with. Do you realize, Jason, that in his follow-up, there was not one mention of his action item, not one, of him following up and saying, by the way, I followed up on this particular salient point. Now, if he had done that and given some analysis, which, by the way, his analysis on some of the security-related elements, some of the articles published by Nielsen and others about various different elements, they had merit to it. It truly had merit. And I said to myself and sent it to our development team, hey, is this something that we should be concerned about, right? So it had merit to it. But it wasn't compelling enough to get me to do anything. And so he sent me one message, one, that was 4 weeks ago. Just one. I didn't reply. And he gave up. But had he done his real homework, which is take the time to look at how do you have a funding program, you have a startup program, how do I qualify for that? Now, if I don't qualify for it, tell me that. And at least you've checked that box that the action item that you took to follow up, that you completed that action. But that was single-handedly the most important thing. And I gave that cue. That was, in my mind, performance-based selling, to your point, is centered around, did you read the audience?
Yeah.
If you read the audience, then you knew what was important to them. And it's like a comedian, in my opinion. When the audience is cracking up laughing over that line of that joke, then you keep on rolling with that joke as long as you can until you wash it out, right? Am I wrong on that?
Keep working that nerve. You said quite a bit, and I'm trying to catch up by all the notes and all the things that I wanted to ask. Let me ask you, for just a question, did the salesperson record or ask permission to record this Zoom or this phone call?
Affirmative. They recorded the call.
Okay, so the reason I ask that is because sometimes you just can't write fast enough. And so if the call wasn't recorded, then, okay, that might be an excuse. I might give a little bit of leeway that they just didn't pick up on it. But all great performers, Chris Rock, Chris Rock especially, when he was getting ready for his HBO specials, he would bring a recorder and his notebook, pop it on the stool, and I would record. All of my friends recorded our open mics as well, because you never know. You're just going. you're talking and you might step over a beautiful hook or a way to extend that joke, like you said, and work that nerve. And so recommendation would be to, again, record all of those calls, play them back, and listen very carefully to what your prospect is saying. The other thing that would have raised this person's credibility if they had come back to you and said, Mario, unfortunately, we can't offer X or Y. Should we even continue the conversation? That would have given you the opportunity to bow out and not go through a 50-minute call, waiting for the goods at the end of the call. And so that also takes guts. That also is part of a performance, which is doing something probably not in your best interest, perhaps ending a call, but being in your best interest at the end of the day, because it's going to raise your credibility that you weren't afraid to share that bad news.
And what about the no follow-up after one email?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm curious as to what he said. It was probably just checking in, I would imagine.
Well, the one follow-up that he did was a very deep analysis of why one AI is more secure than the other AI. And then he asked me a question, which was a call to action, which is, is this enough to generate interest? But the point is that I was saying is he missed the whole entire major action item that he took, which was, hey, I'm with this provider because they've offered a $100,000 startup fund for me to utilize their products and services. I know that you also offer the same thing. Can I get some money? Because if I can, we'll have a discussion and may the best man win, right? But then you come at it, and I believe that the answer was, hey, there's no more money to give, and so let me go at it from a security standpoint. Now, if that was the case, which I subliminally read this in the message, then what you do is as a seller, you read the audience, and the audience asked, and you took an action item. He took it. I'll find out. If that's not available, then you say, let's talk about some of the security issues that you may be faced with. Is this enough to continue the conversation? And at that point, I would have said, that's a good one. But even if I forgot to say, that's a good one, or yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't, that was the last email that I heard from him. And it's been 3 weeks or 4 weeks since he sent that last email.
Yeah. It's crazy. What's really crazy and what I see when I've worked with large companies, not Oracle in particular, but sometimes you've got experienced sellers that second guess themselves. And this is where that confidence comes into play, in that, wow, I've actually got someone that wants to speak with me. This is as far as I've really gotten. I should involve other people and get their opinions. And if you don't play the recording, and if they don't debrief them properly, you'll get all this advice, and then they could take that direction, and go against what they really know they should be doing, or are too concerned to do that. And so, but I don't doubt that this guy probably could have dug in a little deeper and done some listening and replayed that conversation.
Well, no doubt. And that's why I'm a big believer in recording software, the technology, and utilizing AI. If your note taker has the ability to listen and it's recording or taking notes for you, then theoretically it should be following up and saying, hey, don't forget to, and then you have your action items. And then when I have sales calls, I let our AI recorder come in. And I literally say, all right, so my action items are on every single call, because that's the cue that the AI is listening for, is action items, and they start listing out all the action items. And then I know immediately in my notes, I go and copy those in, put them at the top. And the best part is the listener actually starts sending me messages saying, hey, did you finish this action item? Did you do this action item? If you say those keywords. And so those are, like, again, performance-based, right? So you got to know what the keywords are, and that's some of the things that I do. And in this case, one of the other things that, like, in our CRM, it actually, if you've got something in the pipeline, even under qualified or new opportunity in the pipeline, it shows you when was the last time you communicated with somebody at that particular opportunity, and it highlights it as now it's on 7 days, now it's 14 days, and then you've got at day, whatever day you program it from a sales ops perspective, it ends up telling you, it starts sending emails. Hey, you haven't communicated in the last 15 days for this particular prospect. They haven't clicked on the website, a link, downloaded anything. Are you sure that you shouldn't be doing something? And I think that's where we really got to have, it can't just be all the seller. We've got to have technology enabling us to be able to be better and perform better and perform at our peak. And if they do have that, then shame on him. Unfortunately for this particular seller, I'm very disappointed. But I never, one of the things I love doing is coaching. And so I never sit there and, put them on the coals and just burn them to the crisp. But I do coaching. And I think these are various elements you're talking about is, hey, when you show up to a meeting, you better show up to perform at your peak. And I think that's the message that we're talking about. Yeah.
Not only stand-ups, but think of, I've had lots of friends whose parents were police officers and fire people or firemen and firewomen. And, they might work a 40-hour week, but they only have to reach for the holster for 30 seconds and they ought to be ready, And so fortunately with sales, no one's in that grave danger, and have to get it that right. But if you begin to operate and take your business that seriously, you're going to start to change some of the zeros on your paycheck, for sure.
100%.
Well, you got to be ready.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about this last question here I've got for you from the book on the Hartz Method, a Sales Performance Playbook. What lasting impressions or impression, singular or plural, do performance-based sellers leave on their prospects and clients? And I talked about the impression that was given for me personally, but talk a little bit about that. Could it be? Is it good? Could it be good? Could it be bad? Or
well, I can tell you what I'd hope for. I'd hope for a prospect to feel as if the salesperson was organized and process-based. To have your prospect get off a call and think to themselves, he or she has obviously done this before. Now, whether they've been in sales for 1 month or for 10 years, that would be the goal, that your prospect says to themselves, they've done this before through the questions they've asked and the confidence they displayed. And if you haven't had your prospects think to themselves, from what I just shared, their lack of credibility is obviously a bit transparent. And so, again, being transparent also, like we said earlier in our conversation about bringing that bad news to the top of the conversation, which is obviously not in a salesperson's best interest, but putting your prospect first as well. And so what were the types of questions that you were asking? Was it all seller-based and where's the money hidden on your body? Or let's have a discussion as to how I can make your life easier. You could even open sales calls that way. And so, again, we all want to be operating in their best interest, not ours. And I'm sure there's been other people that you've interviewed and that you've had guests on your show. But yet, why do we keep saying that? Because we all come across sellers that consistently have commission breath and that are looking for a live pulse and picking beer cans off a fence. And again, it's easy to say, but it's difficult to do. And again, if you start to treat your prospect as if they're an audience of 1,000 or 1, you got to come correct.
Commission breath. I don't know if I've ever heard that one before. That's a good one.
That's an oldie but a goodie. Oh yeah.
They've got commission breath. All right, we'll have to have a separate podcast on commission breath. I like that one. Well, Jason, it's been amazing having you on the show. If someone wants to get connected with you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn, email?
So they can visit me on Instagram at the Hartz Method, or they could go to my website and contact me there at thehartzmethod.com.
And if you're looking for Jason on LinkedIn, it's Jason, Jason, Hartz, Hartz. And make sure, please, listeners, when you reach out to him on LinkedIn, send him a personalized connection request on LinkedIn and tell him you heard him on the Modern Selling Podcast. Jason, I got one last question for you here, and then we've got to run. Your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
All right, I know we only have a little bit left, but you're talking to a film major here, and so again, if I got to throw out the Goodfellas and the Goodfellas and the Godfathers and the Casinos and all that, I'm going to have to go with an old one that you might not have heard of. It's called The In-Laws with Alan Arkin and Peter Falk. It's one of the best comedies I've ever seen, and as a matter of fact, I have a personal affection for that one because the director of The In-Laws was also the director of The Babe, a movie I worked on in Chicago back in the day. And so I was fortunate enough to look over his shoulder while he was directing. So it's called The In-Laws, and it's one of the classic comedies of all time.
The In-Laws it is. That's the first time we've had it on the show. Jason, thank you so much for joining us here on the Modern Selling Podcast. Hey, all of you listening in right now, don't turn that down quite yet. I've got this very important message for you right now. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.